Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for being here for another Tropilunch. For today's talk, we have Ayushi Jain. She's currently a PhD candidate at the University of Miami Avis Center for Ecosystem Science and Policy. Ayushi holds a master's in ecology and environmental science from Pondicherry University in India. Her research focuses on freshwater systems, endangered species conservation, and human dimensions in conservation. Her interdisciplinary work combines ecological fieldwork, remote sensing, political ecology, and community-based approaches. Focusing on critically endangered turtle Pelochelis cantori, she's working to find ways to sustainably manage small dams that protect riverine biodiversity while securing local communities' water needs. She's also a National Geographic Explorer and a recipient of England's Shindatani Scholarship for her work with Pelochelis cantori. She was awarded the Young Naturalist Award by the Sanctuary Nature Foundation in India and was also featured in the Anita's Mani's Woman in the Wild book. So with that, Ayushi, thank you for your talk and
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ayushi Jain. Thank you for introducing me. Today, I'll be presenting my research that I'm doing for my PhD. And before I start, I just want to mention that we have just finished completing most of my data collection and still doing some more data collection in India. So like a lot of preliminary analysis there, not a lot of results, but I hope you still enjoy it. So I want to I want to start by addressing the main problems that I've identified. So freshwater ecosystems covers less than 1% of land surface, but more than 50% of human population lives within 3 kilometers of a freshwater body. And this goes on to show how incredibly dependent humans are on these freshwater resources. And as the human population has increased, so has the negative impacts on these freshwater ecosystems and biodiversity. And according to Living Planet a report, freshwater systems have actually seen the greatest decline in any other ecosystem types, with almost 85% decline in the vertebrate population since 1970. And one of the leading causes for one of the leading threats and the common threats to these habitats are the dams, because these dams fragment these rivers and streams. And over the past 3 decades, dams have been criticized not just for their ecological impacts, but also their social impacts because of the restricted access to common goods, displacement of people, and social conflict. And many of these studies largely focus on large dams. And small dams are usually sold as more eco-friendly alternatives. However, is small truly better? Because of the notion that small dams are more eco-friendly, there have been unchecked construction of thousands of small dams, not just in India, where my work is focused, but like across the globe. And studies have shown that series of small dams on a river can have more impact, or if not, sorry, equal impact, if not more, in terms of hydrological changes as well as habitat changes compared to a large dam. And a lot of lack of attention and lack of research hinders any informed decision making on these small dams. When we talk about India, a lot of times in small dams are exempt from in any sort of environmental clearances. And according to Global Dam Tracker, India is one of the leading countries in dam construction with over 5,000 large dams and thousands of other structures like barricades and anicuttes and barrages. And small dams are not even counted in that tally. And a lot of these dams are actually for irrigation purposes. So these are small scale irrigation dams. But despite so much investment in these dams, these structures are still failing to address the larger water security and further degrade the ecosystems. Apart from the ecosystem, socially as well, they have very unequal distribution of costs and benefits to the local communities. And this is then exacerbated by the lack of public participation, which then inhibits our ability to come up with better decision making processes. So I will be addressing the ecological social, and political aspects of small dam management in this study system called Chandragiri River in the South Indian state of India, Kerala, and this is in the district of Kasaragod. So Chandragiri River originates from the Western Ghats before emptying into the Arabian Sea. Now, this is the dam that I'm working with called the Bavikara Dam. It is on the lower reaches of the river. And the dam was built there so that they could store the freshwater system, freshwater supply in the upstream of the dam, as well as prevent any salt water that is coming into the freshwater stream. This is done because a lot of population in like the local communities depend on these systems not just for irrigating their farms, which is the primary source of their livelihood, but also for drinking water supply. And I'm also addressing this problem of managing small dams with respect to the conservation of a critically endangered species called the Cantor's giant soft-shell turtle in India. Now, this species is widespread across the South and Southeast Asia. It is distributed in 11 countries, but is considered extremely vulnerable, threatened across its range, and even locally extinct in some of these countries. By the IUCN has recorded for approximately 80% reduction in its population globally, and in the last 30 years, and there is no evidence of recovery of this population, and they have put the status as critically endangered. This species is also characterized as evolutionarily distinct and globally endangered by the Zoological Society of London, and this is an organization that I started my work with in 2019. So I'm going to give a brief background of my work with ZSL that I started with ZSL in 2019, and to kind of give like some local context about the species and the work that we have been doing. So the Palapuvan is actually the local name of this turtle in India. It's called Palapuvan because the nose resembles a flower, which is called the puvan. So in 2019, we discovered the first individual in the river, not discovered, more like located the first individual, and that's how we brought in attention to this in this landscape on this species. In 2020, we built an alert network with the local communities and tried to understand the local ecology as well as some of the threats to these turtles through local ecological knowledge. In 2021, which I consider to be the turning point, is when we first identified the breeding population. And this is the first ever breeding population known for this species in India and second ever in the world. So once we got to where we found a breeding population, there was more conservation attention, there was slightly more funding for this species. But at the same time, we also identified some of the major threats to these turtles, one of which were the dam, and this is the Bavikara Dam, not just directly to the individuals, but also the nesting grounds, because this is the downstream. So the dam is closed and holds the water upstream, and that floods the whole nesting banks across the turtles range in the locally. And then in 2022, we started institutionalizing this effort by involving the local forest department, and we also came up with a local watcher program in the study area to strengthen on-ground conservation efforts to protect these nests from flooding. In 2023, we continued doing the nesting surveys and did active intervention by relocating some of these nest ex situ for their protection in artificial incubation settings such as this. And since 2025 to 2026, we have now been focusing on involving multi-stakeholder initiatives, which is also part of my PhD, which I'll be discussing more in this talk. And by involving not just communities, but also different governmental institutes to come up with better management strategies for small dams. So putting it all together, the ecological, socio-economic, and governance, we are looking at, I cannot see that, but I'll try to like remove it. Yeah. So for the ecological impacts, I'm looking at how this Bavikara Dam is associated with the risk of inundation or flooding of nesting grounds, and what are the suitable nesting characteristics for this turtle. In terms of socioeconomic impacts, I'm looking at the use, benefits, vulnerability, and risk associated with the dams to the local communities. And third, I'm looking at how the decision-making process is done, in what way communities are participating, what way political and power influence is there, and the future management pathways. All of this all of this to evaluate different trade-offs, identify management options, and possibly recommend management strategies by the end. So I have 5 chapters from this PhD, but in this talk I'll be discussing 3 of those, which are the ecological, social, and political framework dynamics of this small dam in Kasaragod. So some of you might be wondering why soft shell turtles. And one of the reasons that I always give people is because they're critical in maintaining the health of the aquatic ecosystems. Turtles are known as the cleaners of the river. They feed on dead and decaying matter and keep the systems healthy for us to use. Um, Additionally, this might not matter to look like a lot of people, but not here. But 70% of the global soft-shell turtle population are currently threatened with extinction. And this is a big percentage. We don't have much information on these taxes, and that makes managing these turtles and coming up with strategies even more difficult. So, for my second chapter, I was looking at ecological impact of this Pavigara dam, specifically to do with the nesting of this turtle called the Pellicillus canteri or Cantus giant softshell turtle. I'm doing this through the combined methods of remote sensing as well as ecological fieldwork. So before I go into the details of what I did, some of the background is that a lot of freshwater turtles use these sandbanks for nesting. They are dependent on these nesting grounds, even though they spend a lot of their time in freshwater systems. And dams are known as one of the leading threats to these turtles. And not just because they inhibit the turtles from crossing the river, they fragment their habitat, but also flood the habitat for the nesting. A lot of times, dams have been documented to reduce nesting opportunities for many soft-shell turtles globally. And this has been the same case for our turtle species as well, which I noticed from personal observation. And for one of the rarest turtles, soft-shell turtles in the world, called the Yangtze giant soft-shell turtle, only 4 individuals are left in the wild. 70 something percentage of the habitat has been flooded in China because of large dams. And we don't really know how long these turtle eggs uh, can uh, can remain submerged and still successfully hatch. But based on the personal observation, 3 days that our nets were flooded in the study area, the turtles failed to hatch. So we don't really know, but like obviously they cannot tolerate any flooding. And because we have like a lot of data that is missing, we don't have information, we cannot come up with effective management. I think that is going to be my closing lines for all the slides. But I want to give you some timeline of why this is an issue. So like nesting season for the species begins in January and February is when the turtles come out to nest. And they need 60 to 90 days, about 2 to 3 months, to incubate and hatch. And this is the same time that it coincides with the dry period in the study area. So this is the time that the local communities need water because the rivers are dry. And this is when they operate the dam. They close the dam shutters so that the water level can be increased, the water can be stored behind the dam. And this is what is causing the whole problem. So we don't know what happens to the species rest of the season because there's like heavy monsoons in Kerala and the dams are opened when the monsoons begin. So my first question was to see the changes in Chandragiri River before and after the dam, and I used remote sensing. So what I was talking about now, you see it in this video. So please note the date in the corner. From 2015, it goes to 2024, and the dam started. The dam started operating in 2021. So as we go over time, you'll see there are some banks available, but 2021 they start to disappear and they disappear pretty much completely by 2024, and we have done the analysis for 2025 as well, and by 2025 we're losing 85% of the nesting habitat for the turtle. And this research is currently in review by remote sensing applications journal, and you see that these impacts are sustained, they're not really going back up. So it's a really grim picture for the turtle. And then I wanted to follow it up with ecological surveys to see how the operations at the dam impacts the nesting ground. I do not have analysis for this, but what I'm collecting is height of the dam shutters and daily water level fluctuation from the authority, which keeps the records for these different dams, the Bavikara Dam, and there is one more structure on the river. So we're collecting for both of those. And then at the same time, I'm collecting field data, like the water level depth at the nesting grounds. This is my field team who goes above and beyond for me. And we install these water measures, and this was within like 1 hour. So like we had installed this water meter because we knew that they were going to close the dam, and within an hour the water level increased as much with all the sand area submerged under the water. So we are collecting this for we did it in 2025 from January to May until they opened the dam again, and this year. So we still are gathering this data every day, twice a day actually, to see water level fluctuations through the day with dam operations. Then we're also collecting some precipitation and temperature data just to cover all our bases. Then for a third research question, I'm also looking at what bank characteristics influence the placement. Because we don't just want to say that dam is impacting the banks, we want to give solution. We want to say, okay, this is the kind of bank that the services are preferring. So what we can do to strengthen these banks to maybe create a new artificial banks, which is the solution we have been discussing with the local departments there as well. And so for that, I did nesting surveys using boats. We also engaged our alert network that have been established in 2019, and we used camera traps as well. And once we do find a nest, we record some of the nest characteristics, which I'm not going to go into details here, just to see what like the nesting ecology of this turtle. And a lot of this information we have no idea about, even though there is some work going on in Cambodia, nothing has been published. So we're hoping to like put out that information through this research. In 2025, I got 9 nests, which was the highest ever since like 2021. We have been doing these surveys, and we had about 184 eggs from 5 nests that we relocated. And in July 2025, there were 47 hatchlings, which is not great, but it was the most ever we got from 1 year of nest protection program. In 2026, we had 5 nests. These are photos from both the years. And we only relocated 1, and that has not hatched yet. So we're still working on just documenting what happens. But so far, 1 nest has hatched, from which we had 15 hatchlings. How do we record it? By counting the empty shells, because that was in the ground, we did not relocate it. So we just counted how many empty shells were there. So the goals of this chapter are to identify the post-dam changes in critical nesting grounds of Pelliculus canteri, determine what are the different threshold levels that can cause nest inundation and what are the safe water fluctuation limits, and then assess suitable factors for nesting, which can guide fortification and construction of resilient nesting ground. Now, I know I don't have many results, so I brought some videos of camera traps, and hopefully that will be a little bit more. So we did find a lot of we did gather a lot of data on the activity of turtles. So what time do they come to lay nest? How long they spend in the field, like digging their nest. So we had like documentation of nesting, which is the first time that we have for this turtle. So this was a pretty like big information for us to like kind of like try to publish that information for people, because we always keep saying that we don't have enough data. We also got some evidence of hatching, what time that the hatching occurs. And sadly, this year actually, a few weeks back, we also found predation event by the monitor lizard feeding on a hatchling over here, if you see. And this was the nest that had 15 hatchlings this year. So there have been information that we have gotten, not just on the nesting, but like the activity pattern, what time did the turtle come out. A lot of times we had just assumed it was a nocturnal basker, means it bask in the night, but we have also seen activity during the day. So that has been great. And other than that, we have other interesting sightings like this leopard. We have had many monitor lizards, which is not great for the turtle, but it's still there. It's good to document. And we've had many otters playing around in the sandbanks, which is also good. This is a smooth coated otter, and many birds. And we're still trying to analyze our camera trap data. There's lots of pictures, so it's going to take some time, but this is so far what we've gotten. So now the social impacts of the dam. So we have seen what dams can do to in the testing grounds. We are waiting for more results. And hopefully by the end of this summer, I'll have something. But in terms of social impacts, I wanted to see how communities at different spatial scales perceive the cost and benefits of this structure, the Bavikara Dam, and how does it vary temporally? And how do decision makers and engineers and external actors perceive the same cost and benefits of the dam to these communities? And this is in terms of infrastructure, livelihood, and community outcomes, which I will show more what are those. Um, so the social impacts of dams can vary significantly across different scales. So Kircher and Charles have put this taxonomy over here, which you can see that in terms of infrastructure, in terms of livelihood, and in terms of community, dams can have different impacts. Similarly, they can have different impact in different space, like spatially, time at different life stages of the dam, as well as the value, whether it's positive or negative. And a lot of times there's a lot of mismatch between the positive promised benefits by the government and actual realized benefits that is experienced by the communities. And there are not many studies that see how what is the actual water demand and how can it be fulfilled by dams. But mostly these dam decisions are taken based on elections. So because they want to win in elections, it might not be the case everywhere, but it happens often enough. And because there is such mismatch between what the demands are, what the communities need, and what actually is given, there is a need that we involve communities in actual planning in identifying these needs and increase coordination between these different actor groups. And so that is why I wanted to collect information first at what do the communities need, at what scale do they need it, what are the main groups that are getting benefited, what are the main groups that are getting impacted. So I used this different buffers around my river at different spatial scale, 500 meter, 1000 meter, and 1500 meter. And this is the dam, the small thing over there. And I wanted to see upstream and downstream the impact in terms of not flood control. We are looking at saltwater intrusion because that is why the infrastructure was built, in terms of livelihood and community outcome, which is the social conflict basically is here. So we did do participatory workshop with local community using spiderweb configuration. This was actually done by one of the students at UF and has been very helpful to replicate this same method in my study area. We had on a scale of 0 to 5, negative and positive ranking by the communities in these 7 different indicators, which is saltwater intrusion, community conflict, income and job benefits, any water availability, irrigation, fisheries, and for the total. So how we did this participatory workshops is we had people rank it individually. Then we paired 2 people based on the similar occupation, gender also, and then we combined the 2 pairs together to make a group of 4, then make a group of 8 until they all come together in one big group. So then the one group in the end also rank these same variables. And by the time they come together in one large group, they have discussed it multiple times. So they really have strong opinions on their ranking. And then we follow it up with a small discussion at the end in this participatory workshop to get like rationales of why did they rank it this way. And we also had open questions for them about what would they think about the management strategies, what are the different strategies they would suggest, what changes do they want to see. So we had these different questions for them that will you'll see how we used it in the end. So we did a total of 9 workshops in different spatial scales. We did 5 on the upstream, 4 on the downstream, 4 in the 500 meter, 2 in the 1000, and 2 in the 1500. We had plans to do more in the second and third buffer, but people there are not really aware of the dam because they're not getting as much benefits, so we didn't get enough participants. But we had a total of 9 workshops with 180 participants, on an average 20 participants in each workshop. And this was really a good way to like have community involvement in saying that, okay, we are actually getting like lost of cost. We don't really have any benefits, or we have a lot of benefits and dams are great and we need more dams. So once we had this information, I don't have a proper results right now, but from my preliminary analysis, it shows that there are mismatches between the benefits and the cost in different areas. For example, if I go to fisheries, people on the upstream are facing negative impacts, and people on the downstream somewhat positive, very small positive impacts. So upstream people said as soon as a dam came, seawater fishes are not coming upstream anymore. So they've lost that supply that was there before. And then in terms of like generally you see like more positive upstream in terms of prevention of saltwater intrusion, water availability, irrigation, and somewhat income. But downstream there's no benefits. They're in downstream 500 meters, people are actually facing negative impacts in saltwater intrusion because they're getting all the salt water, so they don't really have any fresh water supply anymore. So they actually surprisingly want more dams to be put in the lower reaches further. So because they see that how positively the people upstream are getting impacted. So we need to do further analysis to capture these nuances. But so far, this is what we had. And then we did the same data collection with external actors, including the forest department, the dam authorities, the minor irrigation department, which makes decisions for the dams, and water authority in Kerala, have to see how they perceive the benefits and cost to the communities. So we, in total, did this data collection with 13 external actors. We had them complete the same exercise. This was done individually and not in group because it was hard to bring them all together in a group setting. And we see that there are parallels between how the external actors think and how the so how the external actors think and how the communities think. So they have like all have positive rating on an average for pretty much the four: income, irrigation, salt, and water availability. However, external actors seem to think it's more positive than the communities. In terms of fisheries, people think that there are more negative impacts, and external actors think they're negative, but not as much. So there is like the degree to which they think it's better or like worse. And the only thing where these groups disagreed was the conflict, which was surprising to me because communities don't think there is any conflict between them for water, but external actors think there is conflict between them. So there's like a lot of unraveling that is required right now to see exactly what is going on and try to get some more answers on this. So this was my third chapter, and the goals of this chapter is to first assess community benefits and uses of the dams, perceived, again, identify different risks and vulnerabilities which are caused by the dam, analyze different spatial patterns of benefits and cost to the communities, and also compare different narratives between these different actor groups, and then identify different areas for prioritizing of management, areas that there's actual cost and benefits seen. So, and then we can come up with potential strategies to balance this dam use and nesting ground conservation. So the last chapter, but not the least, the last chapter deals with how do politics and power dynamics influence the dam development project, especially in terms of community involvement in decision-making process, and what are the main viewpoints of relevant actors on the current and potential dam management strategies. So uh, politics and power dynamics associated to wealth especially play a very big role in shaping policies in developing countries. And this is what we see a lot of times in India. A lot of times the decisions are made top down and does not include any communities which are getting impacted directly as a result of those decisions. However, we have seen that in countries or in planning of infrastructure where communities were involved, it was a success because they could identify the needs, they could identify these different dynamics that's happening, and then could have a better say and like come up with strategies that can address these power dynamics and political structure. So involvement of communities become necessary because we do see successful examples of it elsewhere. And in countries like India, where dam removal is seen as radical, it is important that we come up with alternative approaches, and that can only happen if we collaborate with different people involved in those decisions, understand and have consensus among different stakeholders, which can result in policies which are beneficial to everyone involved. So to see like how politics and power dynamics influence these development projects and whether communities are incorporated in decision-making process or not, we had given the second spiderweb configuration in the same workshops that we did, and individual external actors as well. So we had given them two spiderweb configurations to do together. So this one was specifically for ranking of their involvement and their uh, the influence of politics and power dynamics in decision making. So, for example, what is communities' role according to communities and external actors in decision making when it comes to dams? Are they aware of dam related processes? Do they have access to information before the plan happens? Do they have regular communication with authorities pre construction? Are they allowed to attend any of the relevant meetings in dam construction decision making? Are any private parties involved in decision making? How is the resource management according to them post dam construction and operation? So they had to rank this on a scale of 0 to 5, and there was no negative ranking. There was only one way positive rank, just 0 to 5. And communities, they did it again in the same group session, like the same grouping and come together as a final group, and external actors did it individually. So again, I have not yet analyzed this data, but this is what one of the final group rankings looked like. One thing that was interesting to me, and like kind of, I can't say that the result is going to be that there was no involvement of private parties. Pretty much everyone unilaterally said that there was no involvement of private party, whether it was external actors or communities. And the other rankings differed whether they were getting benefited or impacted negatively. So if they were impacted negatively, they tend to rank it lower. But again, we have to do more analysis to understand what's happening. So this was my first research question from fourth chapter. And then if you remember, I said that every workshop was followed up with some questions and some opinions on how they should manage these dams. And then we had once we had those discussions from these 9 workshops and 13 external actors, I listed out 24 statements that occurred every so often in these discussions. And these 24 statements also include some statements on dam management from literature that have been proved to be more successful. So once we had these 24 statements from these different discussions, I had them apply it on this Q methodology, which is a grid of, it's called a Q sort. So these 24 statements were then arranged by the community members in most effective to least effective manner. And this is like neutral. So Q sort is a method to kind of understand different, like a range of viewpoints on a certain topic and see whether there's any consensus between them, whether there's any distinguishing statements, whether there's something that they don't agree with at all with each other. And this is what a Q sort looked like, where they kind of like read through the statements, put them in this grid and they might not disagree with something they're putting in -3. It's just like they think it's less effective than the ones that they think more effective. And this is, I'm not going to read through this, but basically they read all the statements, place it in most effective, least effective, then they reviewed it, and then we followed it up with a small interview asking why did they assign these to be most effective and less effective, to like kind of get more rationale between their sorting. So once I have collected this information in February this year, so now that I have these Q sorts, I can enter it in this online application called PQ method, and then kind of the end result will be whether I'll have a shared views and distinguishing or consensus statements between these different groups, and see whether there's any pattern that exists of how these different actors think. And hopefully if there's consensus, that makes our job easier in recommending something which might be accepted by everyone involved. This diagram was made by Vanessa, and I'm so thankful for her to let me use it. So the goals of this chapter were to explore different perspectives that exist around communities' involvement in dam decision making, identify. We also did this activity, I forgot to mention, with 30 people that we identified from these workshops and individual key actor interviews. So we did identify and try to like cover the whole range of opinions that exist on this topic in the study area, and to analyze viewpoints and potential management strategies. So after I did this activity, before I was leaving India earlier last month, I did something like an exit seminar because this project has been going on since 2019. I wanted to bring everyone together in one room, and these are people from different actor groups like dams, from forest department, from communities, from panchayats, which are the local governing bodies. And the goal of this meeting was to not only give out what we have been doing for so many years, that share that information, but also share what is coming, what we plan to do with so much data that we have collected from all of them, because all of them were at some point or the other involved in data collection and participate in workshops or individual interviews and stuff like that. So in this meeting, we had put them in a group of 4 to 5. Let me move it slightly.
Minimizing
How?
the dash first.
Yeah. So we had them put in different groups of 4 or 5, and this was actually inspired from Karen's class, where we used to do a lot of discussions, and these groups were basically made of people from different organizations. For example, this month he is the forest head, the forest official head. He's from the dam authority. This is from district panchayat, like the district governing body. He's a local community member. So we had these multiple groups of different actors together, and we asked them first to write individually and then to discuss in the group 3 questions. First, what information or coordination gaps they think currently exist between these groups. Second, what is one realistic change that we can make in terms of dam management that could benefit both people and turtles? And third, if another dam were to be proposed, which is currently proposed in the river, what information would they need from other departments to support sustainable planning? And before then, we had given out a lot of presentation to them about different opinions that have come up across in decisions. So they had a lot of information already with them before doing this activity. So what resulted from this is I consider that quite like a big change in the study area. First, I'll-
ഭൂമിയിൽ നിന്ന് തന്നെ തുടച്ചു നീക്കപ്പെടാൻ സാധ്യതയുള്ള ഒരു വംശത്തിന്റെ ഒരുപക്ഷെ ഏറ്റവും അവസാനം.
Yeah. So what we what we got was, first we initiated dialogue between these different bodies that never really talk to each other, and they're like in their own government offices and like in their own communities, so they don't really talk. So we asked them to like this. We initiated this dialogue, which was very important, and once they had this discussion, they were writing the answers. They realized that there was need of a communication committee, and they actually made one committee right there, and they were like, okay, this committee is gonna keep us all on the same page. And they now like they have this committee which is like by the district panchayat, like the district local government body, and they're like keeping everyone involved when there's any changes going to happen. And they have like this now almost like a people that anyone can go to when they want to talk about dams or like nesting or turtles or forest or anything. And then secured a verbal agreement. I say verbal because it can change, but like so far the dam authorities and the forest authorities agreed that they would do environmental impact assessment before a dam. At least they would try to do some studies, which is a very big thing because at federal level and state level, they're not required to do so. So they said any new project would involve the dam authorities to contact forest people and try to collect some data and see how it's going to impact and like try to work around it for sustainable planning. I'm hoping that over the next year, I can make that plan more written and more solidified because things change. But this was, I think, a big win for the local communities, even before having like a proper results with them. And they have asked me to keep communicating the results with them of what we find out from the data that I collected. So yeah, this is all for now. Thank you for listening, and I hope you all enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. We have time for several questions.